we need to know why and what we want to do with that, and what are the main technologies or main concepts which helps to um, achieve something, and with examples. Okay, for each and every topic we will see these things. Okay, so why we need to create a component. Okay, components are a structured templates with some functionalities. Okay, so suppose we are developing a website, and one particular functionality we have um, to use it in some particular parts of the website. So rather than writing that code again with the normal HTML things, um, we can create a component, and it can be used in whatever the places that we want to render that. Okay, so any component requirement, first we need to understand the requirement and what are the functionality we want to achieve from that. And after that we need to go for the UX design, how it needs to be look like. Okay, and after that we need to see, is there any component that we can reuse and extend the functionalities. And for that normally each company maintains a integrated style guide where we can see the components, or if we are using any third party or technologies to develop our website, we need to first see the ISU. So we can decide on either we can extend that existing functionality, or we need to create a new component itself. And with the component, what we can achieve is the quality. Means once we created the component, we will create the test cases related to that. So wherever we are using, we can make sure that the quality is maintained. And governance also can be achieved by using the components. So uh, um, and it is easy to test the created component also, because there are already test cases defined. What are the possible test cases which we can verify for that component? So the QA feel uh, compliance with the component definitions. Okay. So with this information, we know why we need a component. Okay. So now we will see what we will do with this component structure. Okay. Before going into the Angular component structure, we need to see what Angular component is going to provide us. Okay. Angular component provides a metadata which will determine the component process or instantiated and used at runtime. Okay, so a component will have a template and uh, some component related metadata, and what are the selectors we need to have, and what are the styles we need to have. So we can say a component is a in Angular, a component is a combination of a template, styles, and some functionality, event handling mechanism. Okay. Let's go to the main technologies. To understand the component in Angular, we need to mainly consider two things. Okay, a shadow DOM and component lifecycle. Why we need to know shadow DOM before component is, let me explain. Okay, a shadow DOM is a DOM uh, which encapsulates and create component natively on the web platform without having to rely on the tools like iframes. Okay, if you take an example of a Twitter button, okay, Twitter is using iframes to render its button in a web page. So for a small button like a Twitter like button, Twitter link button, it is entirely depending upon an iframe, and we all know that what are the problems we face to render an iframe. Okay, so the same thing without iframe we can achieve with a shadow DOM technology. Okay, a shadow DOM is a combination of DOM elements, okay, which is hidden from the outside document object. Okay, so we will not make any changes to the shadow DOM elements. Okay, if we take an example, input range, um, everyone can use the just input type is equal to range is a one input tag DOM element that we are simply using. But if we go deeper into the what is the implementation behind this input type range, if you see that shadow DOM, shadow root, you can see here for the input type range. If you open that shadow root, we can enable that as shadow root from the Chrome settings. We have an option to enable that to see that shadow root. Okay. What they are doing is they are creating a set of divs and a set of styles to achieve this functionality. They are adding attach for an paragraph. What they are doing is for a div, they are adding attached shadow. So with the attached shadow method, what we are doing is we are attaching a shadow DOM to that a div. Okay, and the definition is like this. So the outer encapsulated selector element is input, but inside we can see there is a template with divs and styles. So the same way we will create uh, a component in uh, our Angular also. So there will be a selector and there will be a template inside that selector. Means the user will know only the selector component selector. So he doesn't need to know the entire functionality. What is the functionality we have written over there? Okay, let's see. Okay, so the second part is the component lifecycle. Every component will have its life cycles. In Angular, we have we call it as in hooks. Okay, life cycle hooks. Let's see the hooks directly. With this diagram, we can understand how hooks are going to be work. Okay, we have a browser. HTML DOM object, document object is there. Okay, and we have rendered our component in that one of the as a one of the element. Now, while browser opens, the constructor will be called, and when we are creating the instance of that main component, the constructor of that component will be called, and after that it will check for on changes. If there is any inputs to that component, it will go to the on change method, on change hook. There we can decide on what are the whatever the changes are coming in, we can assign it to the component, this child component related params. Okay, and on init, it will be a hook which will call uh, one once in its lifetime, in its component's lifetime. Okay, and do check is a lifecycle hook which will be called for each and every change detection lifecycle. Okay, change detection lifecycle is means we have two types of change detection lifecycles. One is default and another one is on push. So for the on default change detection lifecycle, this do check method will be automatically called. every time in value is changed. Okay, so let's see. Once DOM is rendered, so the constructor will be called, and in the constructor, we will only instantiate the injector. Suppose if you want to inject any service or any reference components like element ref or change reduction ref, those things. Then I can do that in the constructor. And on change, we are going to instantiate the things like variable assignments, whatever the values you want to assign to the variable. We can do those things on the on change. And on init is going to be called only once. Uh, and it can be used to assign some value to the component variable, and if we want to do some initial value assignments, we can do that from the on init. Okay, and when DOM initialization happens, this on init method will be called, and the initialization we can do that from on init. And when we change any of the element, any of the params value uh, through an observable or by calling some method, uh, the change detection will trigger that change. And if the change happens, means Angular only tracks the changes through reference change or value change. Okay, so suppose there is a param and its reference got changed, then on change method will be called. And if variable is there, integer, float, like that, if the value changes, then on change method will be called. But do check, for each and every operation you do on the DOM, it will be triggered change detection lifecycle, and change detection lifecycle is going to affect all the three nodes in that DOM structure. Suppose you have a button and you are moving your mouse. That is change detection lifecycle. It is a change for the DOM. Okay, so it will trigger and it will go through all the do checks of the subcomponents. So while using do check, we need to make sure we have a conditional check over there. Okay, so um, it will not impact the performance. So it is not recommended to use the do check. Whenever you want to do the change direction, try to use the change direction as the on push, and use the references to change the value. So on change is going to be triggered and we can handle over there if you want to handle anything. Okay, and after these four life cycles, we have a after content init and after content checked. Okay, these are the two life cycles which are going to be applied on a child, and after view init and view child also be applied in childs. Let me explain the what is different between content init and the content view init. Okay, suppose we have a component. Okay, let's take this example. Before going for the content init, let's see the content projection. What is content projection? Content projection is I have created a component, my party component. Okay, through selector I am giving that my party component is the selector one, and whatever going inside that component, if you see in this slide, we can see that my party component have a starting tag and ending tag. In between that tag we have some elements. These are all the elements we call as content. Okay, uh, and in this template, if you see in this slide, you can see that in the template we have written one div. Okay, so whenever we are using this parent com uh, in as an element, okay, that means we are putting this entire template into that DOM structure. Okay, so user just needs to know parent component, parent hyphen component. He can use that as a tag here, like I have shown. We can use it as a tag like this, my parent component. Okay, and use it. So whatever which is coming inside that uh, selector, we will call as a content, and this is called the content projection. And whatever which is appearing as a template, we call it as then child. So if we go to our structure, whenever a do check happens, the next life cycle hook is after content in it. Okay, means it is also called only once in its lifetime, component lifetime, and we can say that all init hooks are called only once in its component lifecycle. Okay, we have three inits: on init, on content init, and on view init, right? These will be called only once in its lifecycle. So on do checks will be called every component change reduction lifecycle. So while using do checks, we need to be very sure that we are intentionally checking that, or you are using on push uh, change reduction methodology. So we will emit that check explicitly on some conditional basis. Okay, so after do check, and immediately it will go to the after content in it, means whatever the content part, it is going to initialize. Okay, and the compiler will compile those things, and after content checked, the child components, whatever it is there, content is there, it's on in it will be triggered. Let's see that through this. If you see this structure, we have prepared this. First parent component constructor will be called, and child component constructor will be called. Parent on init do check is happening, after content init is happening, after content check it is happening. Immediately it is going to child's on changes, because from parent to child we are giving some input. So it is going for the child on changes, and after that the child related all the processes will be going through that. If child have another child component, then again after child's on content checked, it will go to the its child's on changes method hook. Okay, like this. Again after view checked of the child, it is coming back to the parent's view unit. Means before view initialization of the parent component, it is actually checking that all the child components views are initialized, and its data is uh, initialized, and view initialized and view checked. Okay, after parent is uh, a view init happen, if anything happening on the change reduction lifecycle, means mouse movement, or changing some value, or button click events, again do check will be called, and after content check it will be called, because here you can observe the init is not happening. After content check is after do check, after content check is directly getting called, because after content check is happening, it is again going to the child process. Like this the structure will be maintained. Okay, so we have seen that what is the content and what is the view, like so the suppose if I want to access some of the content elements, like you can see here, here I have, sorry, here I have created a parent component. Inside parent component, I have given a div. That means it is a content, and I have given some reference to that. And here in the line content child, at the rate of content child, um, you can see that my content is um, the reference name that I have given here. Okay, so through like that you can access the child content child, and for accessing the template related child, um, view child is there annotation. um, with that annotation, we are giving the wrapper as the reference in the template, and through that reference we are accessing the view child. And after accessing that, we will get all the methods and the properties of that component, and according to that we can do some validations or do some logic over there. Okay, or get some data related to child. Okay, this is the component, and how component will be created with a selector and a template and styles, and uh, how interaction will happen, and what are the life cycle hooks we have, and what are the cost we will bear if we use a do check, a do check, uh, a do check related to component, and after content and view child component. Okay, so finally, after all these life cycle hooks, okay, on destroy will be called once we are removing that element from the DOM, means we are moving to other component or something else. Okay, on destroy normally it automatically uh, release unsubscribe the any subscriptions we have, or and component garbage collection. Those things will be handled on destroy. Okay, so these are the things we have with the component and it interactions. Okay, so the next topic is Angular pipe. Okay, how we will use the pipe. Okay, for this also we need to see why we need pipes, and what we will do with the pipes, and what are the main technologies included in pipes, what are the main things we have in the pipes, and with some examples. Okay, fine. So every web application, we know that we need to get the data and transform the data and show that to the user. These are the main three things we will do. So transformation means um, when it comes to the UI technologies, what I'm saying is when it comes to the UI technologies, we will get the data, transform that, and show that to the user. Okay, once the data arrives to the UI through some an Ajax call or backend call or some internal JSON. Okay, once the data arrives, we cannot show that data directly, right? User cannot understand the raw data, and even though he understand, it is not make sense most of the times. Okay, so we need transformations, right? So that is the main case where we can use the pipes. We can do the transformations manually also. Suppose you are getting one some JSON, some, let's take a simple example, some date from the backend, and if we show that directly like this in this example, you can see in the template what I have written is the hero's birthday is birthday, and in the variable just I am assigning some date, even though the date is in the format of April 15, 1988. I have assigned it is in the output it is showing the full with the global mean wage time, like and the Indian standard time, like this, all these things. User might not like all this stuff, right? He just needs to see that what is the date, April 15, 1988. So here is the case, we can use the pipes to solve these things. What it will do is just what I have done is just I have given the pipe in the same template. If you see, just with the pipe symbol, date I am giving. This is existing predefined Angular pipes, and the output is like April 15th, 1988, the way we expect. And pipes will accept inputs also. Just to give input, we need to just give the colon and give the input to that. Okay, these are all things we know how the transformation happens and everything. And the main thing we need to know is the better way, how we can use the better way, the pipes. Okay, there are two pipes, pure and impure. All the pipes which are provided by Angular are mostly pure. So let's see what is pure and impure pipes. Okay, earlier we have discussed Angular will track only the change reduction related to reference change. Means suppose there is a variable, this dot my name is equal to Arun. Okay, now if I change it to Kumar, okay, then it will track it. And what are the things it doesn't track? The object change. Suppose there is a JSON file, there is an object. Let's take an object. It's an employee object. Inside employee object, we have so many things like uh, it's his name, his job location, and everything. Suppose inside object, I have just changed the age of the employee to something a different value. Angular cannot track those things. Okay, so these are called pure means pure pipes, means where Angular will not track the internal changes of the object, only the reference change it will track, and the value change. Okay, so why we need to do like that is if we track all the changes now, it is going to be a hectic process for the DOM to check all the times the internal values and do changes according to that. Okay, so Angular suggests to, if we have changes in any of the object, just change the value and assign uh, or make it as a copy and assign it to the variable. So the reference will be changed, and according to that, Angular can take care of the change reduction. Okay, these pure pipes are also bound to that principle. Okay, so if there is any change related to the reference, then it triggers the change direction, and on change method will be called. There we can do our business logic. Okay, so the pure pipes will apply on changes related to references. Okay, input value references. Okay, so this is the pure pipe. And impure, this is the example for the pure pipe. Just I'm creating a custom pipe called length, and to implement pipe, we need to import the pipe transform, and we need to implement transform method where we can write our logic, what we want to do. Just for an example, we just took the length of the value. Okay, and what it will do is in the component, yeah, let me go. In the example, what we will do is in my child component, I'm just giving the message, and with the pipe symbol, I'm giving length. And uh, the in the pipe annotation, you can see that a name, length I have given, and the pure true I have given. Means I want to create a pure pipe. Means only it will track the reference changes. Okay, whenever the reference change is happen, that means value change happen, and on change method will be triggered, and according to that, pipe will be instantiated. And we can see that pure pipes are instantiated only once. Okay, and it will be called every time. Instantiation happens only once. Okay, that is also we will see. Okay, but first we will see the impure. What is impure pipe? Okay, impure pipes are like a do check method we have. Do check method is meant for checking all these things, right? Like object, inside object, some value happens. We will check that in the do check. Means do check will be called for each change reduction life cycle, right? In the so we can check that value is changed or not in the do check by some references like that. Impure pipes will be called for each and every component change reduction life cycle. Okay, and it is going to be instantiated for each change, and so it is going to be a burden to the browser, and according to that it will delay the processes. So while using impure pipes, we need to make sure that we have some conditional based checking. Okay, so in that way we can minimize the risk. And Angular suggests use mostly pure pipes, so it will not a burden to the browser. And in the pure pipes only, just through the change reduction lifecycle, change reduction reference, um, um, you using the change reduction reference, you can uh, trigger that change reduction. Okay. The impure pipes can be created like this. Just the change from the pure and impure. In the pipe annotation, we need to give the pure as false. Okay. So if we give the pure as false, it is going to consider it as impure pipe. And let's see the execution. Here in these two examples, you can see that in the constructor, I have given a created length pipe. Okay, here also created length impure pipe. Okay, just to see this warning messages in the console. Okay, see in this example we can see that create length pipe only called once, but create and length impure pipe called twice. Means suppose even we use the create length pipe multiple times in our component, it will be called only once and cached in the component memory, and it can be used for each instance of the component elements. Okay, means suppose I have a 5 elements and 5 places I have used the pure pipe. So only once the pure pipe will be created and used in all the 5 elements. Okay, but for the impure pipes it will not be like this. If I use impure pipe for 5 elements, it will be created for the 5 elements. Okay, and see in the when we going to the, I have a button to toggle the message. When change reduction message changing means change reduction happens, right? On change will be called, and according to that compiler will apply the change pipes on the value. And while applying, you can see that impure pipe is get created, but pure pipe is not created, like we can see for the child also. Okay, so it is recommended to use the pure pipes. And if you want to create just we need to implement the pipe transform, and using the transform method we can give our logic over there. Okay, so the next concept is the services. Why we need services, and what is the use of service, and main technologies that we have used for the services. Okay, to the services are mainly to persist the data and share the data between the components and code reusability. Why we need these services are to have a utility functions. Those are, we can say, singleton utility functions. Okay, utility classes where we can use in multiple components. There are methods to define the scope of this service. We will discuss those things also. Okay. So if we see that uh, service class, for if in this component A, component B, and component C uses the service class through some injections, dependency injections, and for every data refresh, it is calling a service which will get the data and it will transfer to the all the components. So let's see how we can create the services through this is first example. We can see that I have created a hero service with injectable annotation. Okay, with injectable annotation. So these are creating metadata we are creating here, provided in root, and the platform is another thing, is any is another thing. So if we give the provided in root as a root, it will be called for the at a modular level. It will be scoped to the modular level. Means all the components in that module can use that service, and the service instance will be maintained through the entire life cycle of that module. Means once we inject this service provided, means providers will take this as an module level service and create an instantiation for the service. So any component will request that service method and get the data, and if you are storing the data in the service, then it will be maintained across the life cycle of uh, that module. So it is not preferable to maintain that at a root level, or we have a ng module annotation where in the providers we can provide this service. Here also the singleton clause will be created, and its instance scope is maintained at the module level. So if we include that into any other component and inject uh, through that injectable, the injector will inject into that component, and the instance can be, means whatever the data or methods which are part of that service, we can access those uh, for its entire life. Okay. um, so these are the two ways we can have at a global level. Okay. And at component level also we can inject the service. Suppose in this case you can remove injectable annotation is there, right? We can remove the provided in option, just injectable, this service is injectable, and if we import that service and provide that here now, so that service scope is limited to that component only. So that service can be used to get some data, and we have some observable to observe the that service uh, uh, subscribe to that observable, and once the data emits um, from the observable, we can get the data. That's it. We use the data in our component, and when we move to the other component, that then itself the destroyer of that component will be destroyed and data will be removed, and according to that destroy hook will be there for the service also. So on destroy hook will be called, and the service instance also will be destroyed. So even though it is a singleton for that component, it will be destroyed once the component is removed from the DOM. Okay. So we prefer using the services in this way, but there are cases we need to use the um, common functionality between two components and communicate the component through the service. Okay, then we can use the global services like this. Injectable provided in, you can give the root, so the provider will take that as a modular level, and we can inject the service into what are the classes, what are the components we need, and we can use the service functionalities. Okay. So I think with this, I'm done with my presentation. So if any questions, I'm open for that. Okay, let's see what are the questions we have. Rather than asking in the chat, can we do that in the question and answer section? We have some questions in the chat. The following questions: if we need to implement web application using Angular, what are the steps we have to do? For example, if you are using AngularJS, we just have to just import the AngularJS library. Like that, if we need to implement using Angular, what are the steps we have to do using concepts to get started with Angular web application? Actually, to start an Angular project, just we need to have the prerequisites like npm node modules are there, and after npm is installed, we just need to create the Angular application. Angular docs will give a clear idea how to generate how generate functionalities we can use, and how modules can be created. Okay, I think we need a separate section to uh, create the how we can implement a um, Angular application. I think we can share some links, blog links that can guide you on how to create Angular application. Okay, we will note down this question, and we will create a blog around that, and we will share it with the team. Okay, providing the application. Please put the question.
Uh, Arun, actually, we should be looking at the Q&A box. We have all
Yeah.
the questions mentioned there.
Okay.
I'll just read out the first one.
Yeah, I got the question.
Yes.
Yeah. Metadata is, you were able to see my screen, right? Let me go back to the presentation where, let me show you one class that I have created. Okay. Here you can see in the component annotation, we are giving the information like what could be the selector, what are the inputs, what are the styles, URLs, what is the template. These are called the metadata, the main data that we use for the component creation. Okay, so we have a component annotation like that. We have a pipe annotation, we have a injectable annotation, whatever the annotations are there, those will help us on um, see here injectable is there at the rate injectable. Here provided in is a metadata that we are providing to generate that service. Whenever we are using the injectable, it will make Angular will understand that we need to make this service as an singleton, and according to the provided in option, the providers, Angular providers will make sure that it will be provided at the modular level. So these are all we call as a metadata. Okay, I hope I answered the question.
Which is the Angular version? I'm not sure.
Uh, Normally now Angular 9 has released, but the stable version is Angular 8 we are using now. But Angular 9 has given some compiler options and change reduction lifecycle changes, those things. Very interesting topics. I think we will have a separate webinar on that. Okay. Um,
How change detection will take place in the life cycles?
that is what, as I explained, change detection is actually, it will track all the changes wherever you are clicking on the DOM while mouse moving. Those are also actions, right? Change detection, like change detection will track all these things. Okay, and on do check will be called for each and every change detection. Means any change in the DOM will be triggered to do check. So you can imagine in a web page, we will do so many things, mouse moving, just unnecessarily we will click on the box and come out from the box. All these things will be reported to the on do check, this life cycle hook. Okay, it is a very hectic task for the browser to track all those things, right? So that is why we do not prefer the do check mechanism. Do check hook, if you want to implement do check hook now, it is we need to take that decision very consciously rather than using change. There are two types of change directions, default one and on push one. As a metadata, you can change direction as on push. If on push means there is a reference change, on push will be called, and change direction ref using the injectable, we can use the change reduction ref. Okay, that is also in the core module. Using that ref, you can use the method to trigger the change detect. On do check now, you can put some condition like if id is equal to that object dot id is changed, is not equal to change. Okay, then you can call this change reduction using the change reduction ref instance. You can call the change reduction lifecycle. So it is preferable to use change reduction on push. Okay, so it will not be triggered continuously. It will definitely increase the browser performance. So while writing the components, use the change reduction on push. Okay. um,
On to
what
the
to
next question. Can you explain async pipe?
yeah, in async pipe, like async await, it will actually wait for the backend call. Suppose if you have an observable, then what observable do? It will give a promise, a kind of promise to you, like it will get the data and let you know. Okay. Okay. Async means for that operation, it is actually calling that method, and whenever the subscription happens, it will get the data. So async is make sure that that process will not stop. Actually, whenever we call with async pipe, we will whenever data comes now, it will actually render that. Okay, in Angular with async, we will do that thing. Rather than async, it is preferable to use the observables, RxJS concepts. It is we would like to give a webinar on RxJS concepts also. Through that behavioral subjects and everything, we can achieve a better performance. Rather than, okay.
Right. So, thank you for
I
this.
think for this question we have already answered.
Right.
We will create a web blog around that with some boilerplate with a login page, and we will share that in our walking tree site. We can promise related to this. Can you please once again we will shadow down? Yeah. Let me go to the our webinar again. Shadow DOM is basically a wrapper, you can say. Suppose in this example only, if you see, suppose if I want to have a range or input type email, okay. Uh, for that email, whatever the uh, things like it will give you some sample text at the rate, that validations, those things, everything is there, right? Um, you are not writing the DOM elements, just you are using the input and the type you are giving email simply, and it is taking care about all those validations, red mark if we give the wrong value and everything, right? Those things will be handled separately through the shadow DOM. Okay, here you can see that in the example I have highlighted with input type range. the user can see that input type range only, but inside the shadow DOM, you can see so many divs are there, and separate styles will be there. So through shadow DOM, what we are doing is shadow DOM is a combination of DOMs only to achieve something. We can use as simple as just putting one tag, rather than writing the div every time, applying the styles to the div, and um, making the changes, event handling and everything. Just I'm writing for the, I'm giving some div. For the div, I'm making this as shadow DOM. So, and I'm giving one selector to that as an input. Okay. So I can directly use that everywhere I need. So the main intention behind the component also same. We have a template. You can see that a div section, we can see that as a template. Okay, selector is input, and let me go to that. I can see selector is there, app zone is there, right? That is input. Okay, and template is the template URL, or template also we can write directly. Template URL means what are the list of elements we have to make that UI look like. Okay, and what are the styles? The same concept is behind the shadow DOM. We have a template and the styles to styling that template, and we are just using the input as a selector. Okay. uh, uh, what is metadata? This is already addressed. Login get a token user details where we share service or local storage. No, for this one, we should not store the user details or tokens in the local storage. Just we need to maintain that as a global service. At global service, we can maintain, and because we need to we can use some interceptors for token generation, setting the headers with the token, para tokens and everything. We can create a service and it can be accessible to the interceptor. That's it. And while intercepting the HTTP request, we can put that values like headers and everything we can set over there. Using the service is better way rather than the local storage. Okay.
Right. Rajeshwar basically wants to know, are impure pipes
Huh.
are impure pipes custom type?
Yeah, impure pipes. Okay, Angular has given some impure pipes, but most of the times we will create a custom pipe for the impure pipes only. If you want to have impure pipes, and it is not recommendable also, as I explained, for each component life cycle. Sorry, change direction life cycle. It will be called. Means even if you move the mouse, it will be called, and it will check for the data change. And this is actually not stop from that moment. It will go to the child component and its pipes, and its child component, its like the entire DOM tree it will go. So it is not recommendable to create impure pipes.
Right. Now, Chandu wants to ask, in an Angular application, if we log in, we get a token and user details.
I think I have already answered for that. Using services is a better option rather
Right.
than local storage. And because it is a token, we cannot risk that in the browser local storage.
Right. Kushal has asked, can you give some more information on element reference used in component?
Yeah, these are injectable references. Suppose um, uh, if you want to handle um, um, suppose let's take a directive. If I want to create a structural directive, So directives are basically which will help the component related functionality, right? So its structure or some conditional values. Okay. So to implement a directive, we need this element ref, right? So it will track the current element. So you can add the elements, append the childs using this element reference. So it is also an injectable, okay, angular dependency injection. Through dependency injection, we will instantiate that in the constructor, and it will actually point to that current element, component selector element. Okay. Mm.
Anything adding to Venu's question, would like to know what will be the prerequisite for Angular web application.
Angular web application, if you want to create an Angular web application, we need to decide on Node.js versions and Angular versions and Angular CLA command line interface. And if you want to use any third parties, we can decide on Material or PrimeNG. We would prefer Material because it allows us to modify or create our own functionality over there. Means it allows us to modify the component behavior with the CDK. They are giving the CDK, so we can modify the things according to our requirements.
Okay, so Desh is asking, is there a demo app that you can run ADN? So do
At
we have the time
present,
for that?
no, I think uh, at present I don't have any demo apps with me. Might be we can create, as I promised, we can create a blog around that with some boilerplates. Okay, so it will be easy to understand what are the steps we need to follow to create a web application with Angular.
Right
You can
now,
expect that in the walking tree blogs. Right now, we do
okay.
not have. Yeah.
Now we are running short of time, so we'll just quickly go through the few next questions that we have. Can you talk about interceptors?
Okay. Actually, interceptors are like a HTTP request. Normally, in a web application, how we will get data means we will create a request, HTTP request, and using the methods post, put, get, and delete, right? So suppose for all those requests, we want to give some header values. Okay, like an example, we have a session token. Okay, and we want to check the session token and put it as a bearer token in the header request headers, then we can implement this interceptor HTTP request interceptor, and we can using the request HTTP request object we will get in interceptor method. We can modify the headers and everything, and likewise, interceptors are actually between a server and our UI app. Okay, so whenever the request happens, this interceptor will intercept the request, and whatever the things we want to do, we can do over there on the request headers, or if at all you want to add any header over there, you can add or modify a header over there. You can modify the request headers over there. Okay.
Nathan wants to know, for beginners, which Angular version to learn to
I
understand the complete structure.
I think I prefer 8. Means it will give a complete structure. After that, you learn the things related to compilers, what are the concepts we have, change prediction life cycle, and interceptors, whole things. Then you can move on to the 9. So, what are the changes you can look for the change in the Angular release notes? you can simply understand the changes.
Right.
So yeah, it is preferable to start with Angular 8.
So, fine. Thank you, Arun, for your time. That's actually all the time we have today. I can still see a few questions coming in, and we have noted all of these. We will be getting back to you, as Arun just said. You can expect a few more blogs from him on this topic. Do check out our blog section. We regularly come out with new stuff on Angular. And thank you for joining us today. Please stay safe, keep yourself safe, stay inside your homes. And there are many more interesting webinar sessions coming up, including for that on Angular. So we'll keep you
Yeah,
posted on these. You were saying something,
yeah,
Arun?
yes. Next webinar we are planning for the because so many questions on change reduction.
Right.
We will
Yeah.
plan a webinar on a change reduction life cycle and what are the things we can do over there. And we will plan a session on directives, dependency injection, and other stuff with Angular.
Fine. And I'll also be sending you a recording of this session tomorrow.
Okay, yeah,
So
sure.
if you to everyone who has attended or registered for this session, and in case if you think we have missed out on something or we couldn't address your question today, please do reply to that mail with your question, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you everyone, and good night. Good night, Arun. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.